What we'll do today is just starting with, welcome, setting the stage. That's where we're at. I'll give you some context on the market because I know everyone here is coming in with different backgrounds in the market. Maybe you're really engaged in the past and have been, in different roles recently. So I just want to sort of set us off on the same place. And then we'll introduce everyone here, talk a bit about your affiliations, what you like about the market, what you'd like to see change about the market, an important topic. And then we'll turn it over to our team from Market Ventures, Inc. So we have Ted Spitzer and Hugh Boyd with us, two public market experts who I feel very lucky to be working with us. All of this this has been a long time coming, but in 2019, the city undertook a plan with a different consultant, David O'Neill, who I know some of you had worked with, and with FAIR as their sub-consultant. We have Tanisha here. And that report was a plan to revitalize the market, and it did a lot of community engagement and stakeholder engagement. But one of the things in that plan was a recommendation that we master plan for the market. So the way that this plan will differ is this will focus a lot more on operations. So what do we need to be operationally successful at the West Side market for this new nonprofit? We'll talk about what the transition is, kind of pros and cons, that's okay. The role of this advisory committee, we'll talk about some other public markets that have a nonprofit operator, and then we'll report out. We'll talk about our feelings.
More team building.
More team building, yeah. We started with this exercise, and now we're going to the additional team building. We also have Jane. Hi, Jane. I just noticed that you joined us. Welcome. Jane Platten on. I just want to make sure everyone knows who's joining us remotely. So we'll just start with, okay, good. It changed for them. With just some background. So it always starts with merchants. So purposefully, we'll start with our merchants. We have a lot of popular and resilient merchants, many of whom are joining us here today, and a lot of legacy tenants. But we do have 32% vacancy at the West Side market right now. It was 7% before COVID. So COVID, I see it was really an accelerator of the market. So a lot of businesses who were already thinking about retirement, retired, and it just really accelerated the pace. Many vendors report declining sales. We don't collect sales data from our vendors, so we don't have, hard data that some markets might have to really show that that's the trend. But a lot of our vendors have told me, my sales are going down, which I take very seriously. Our facility infrastructure is not serving many of our prospective vendors' needs. So we have all sorts of people who call and say, I want to open a business at the market. I'm going to make breakfast sandwiches. And I say, we don't have a place for you to make breakfast sandwiches at the market right now. So, there's some limitations on the building. We don't have adequate prep space, electrical, water. There's all sorts of things in the building that need to be improved to accommodate both existing vendors and prospective vendors. We've had some customer complaints about quality. I think everyone who's familiar with the market has heard that, hi Carrie, at one point or another. And then our merchant mix does not reflect Cleveland's culinary, ethnic, and racial diversity at this time. We'll go to the facilities. The market turns 110 this year. So it has made it for 110 years. We want it to make it another 110, 220, and so on. The market has seen over $10 million invested in the building and in the facility in the last 10 years. So that's on some of the things that you might not immediately notice. It's the boiler, it's the glycol system that cools the coolers downstairs, it's the parking lot, and then is currently undertaking some changes to the clock tower. You've probably seen the scaffolding to restore the clock tower, some vendor booth improvements, a clean room update, so that's the top left photo there, where vendors, clean down their equipment, and a couple other projects are in the works. And then we have, for this next fiscal year, allocated funds to replace all 4 elevators. So in the market, the 4 service elevators are really the spine of the market and where our vendors rely on very heavily because all of their products are stored in the basement and then brought upstairs on those elevators. And right now, we have what? Maybe like 1.5 that works reliably. And so it is an incredibly important investment to update those 4 elevators. And then we're also planning to update the roof, which is currently leaking. According to a 2016 facilities assessment and a 2019 update, we need at least another $20 million more in just basic facility repairs. That's not, the sexy stuff of let's put in a culinary kitchen. That is HVAC, basement, plumbing, electrical, basic building repairs. Operations of the market, this is something that I just feel like is worth noting. The city is and will continue to manage the market throughout this process, and this is who's on that team doing that. So on site, we have a market manager, Felicia Hall. She's been at the market for the past, she's coming up on her 7-year anniversary this month. We have a supervisor of markets, Ray, who has been at the market for 21 years. He started as a laborer and focuses a lot on the facilities. A leasing and administrative operations coordinator who is going to start later this month in August. This is a position that's been vacant since January. We're bringing in a woman named Colleen Bowman who was on the board of the Pike Place Market and then worked at Columbus's public market. She's moving to Cleveland for this admin position because she's passionate about markets and wants to work for the West Side Market. We have 1.5 laborers who do a variety of things at the market, but primarily pick up the trash around the market and make sure that it goes to the trash compactor. And then we should have 2 building stationary engineers on paper. We currently have 1, and they help manage, the boilers, the refrigeration system, make some emergency repairs throughout the building. We then have contracts for cleaning, pest control, security, and then for some select repairs. So for our glycol system and our elevators, we have a contract where we can call and say, hey, our elevator is broken and it needs to be repaired. The others who are helping us operate the building in some way or another is our United West Side Market Tenants Association, who handles our marketing contract. So when you see anything on social media that is through a contract that is managed by the Tenants Association, they also weigh in on operations and serve a really important role for the market. And then we have the Mayor's Office of Capital Projects, who helps manage a lot of these building projects that we're doing and design the building projects, and the City of Cleveland Property Maintenance. So when we need a plumber, an electrician, we call the city's property maintenance. This took me a long time to understand who all was doing stuff in the building, so I saved us, this is like 2 months of work on one slide. Our finances are in part why we're here. The West Side Market is a struggling asset for the city of Cleveland. Our vendor rents are our primary source of income. Our only other source is government subsidy. And so we're relying on tenant rents and government subsidy. Our vendor rents have been frozen for existing tenants since at least 2017. We have this complicated formula, but it basically means as our vacancy increases in the market, tenant rents should be going up to cover our costs. Which would then cause a spiral of our rents are going up, and so vendors are leaving. And so our vendor rents have been frozen since 2017. Our fiscal year budget is just over $1.8 million. It anticipates transferring in over almost $900,000 from the general fund into the market. Last year, we transferred in just under $500,000 to subsidize the West Side Market. And then we also have some operational costs that aren't really reflected in the budget. So because we're a city building, we are able to use, city resources for some things that would otherwise cost a building money, like removing the snow happens from parks maintenance. They don't charge us back anything. IT, HR, all of those things happen through the city program. So that's, some costs that aren't necessarily reflected in our finances. And then everyone always asks about the parking. The parking lot has lost money the last 2 years. So the parking lot is free for the first 90 minutes, $1 an hour after that. We're hoping this year it is not at a loss because with COVID, we have more people visiting and a lot more nightlife on West 25th. But a lot of times people will say, well, just use the parking lot to fix all of this stuff, right? And that's not an option. So one I just wanted to point out. So, where we're at is, these are, sort of where we're at with the market. It is, maybe a slightly bleak picture that I painted. But there's, obviously a lot of good in the market, right? It is busy. People are visiting the market. People love the market and want to see it thrive. And we believe that the best way to do that is to, do this transition to a nonprofit. And so, recognizing the importance of the market and its importance in the community, we're doing this transition to really be careful about how we transition to the market. Everyone always asks, like, well, what do you want, right? Like, what is the goal? How do you want the market to be? And really, we want to make sure that the market maintains the authenticity and unique characteristics that make it so cherished in our community. We want to make sure that the market welcomes all of its residents and visitors. We want to make sure that it supports thriving, I said this last night, thriving businesses that are making good money, that are also independent and diverse. We want to improve the community's access to interesting and healthy food. We also want to reduce the need for operational subsidies, particularly by identifying other sources of revenue. So that's where we're at. And what we wanted to do next was just give everyone here an opportunity to introduce yourselves. There are 20 of us and a 90-minute meeting. So while I want to hear, as much as we can, just be mindful. So if you could just share your name, sort of your organization or your affiliation, some personal history with the market, and then one of your favorite things and something that's frustrating. So we can just go around the room, and I'll start with Chef Wells.
Hi, I'm Chef Eric Wells. I am a private chef, been a chef in the city for 18 years. I've been shopping at the market for at least 15 of those years. First one when I was a kid. My favorite thing about the market is my relationship that I've built with with the vendors there. I have an amazing relationship with them. My most frustrating thing about the market, just the cleanliness of it. It's sometimes a little dirty. That's what I would say. Thank you.
Perfect. Everyone do that.
My name is Dan Whalen. I run development for Harbor Bay. We just built a project right across the street. And so over the last certainly 5 years, I've had a lot of personal experience with vendors, the market itself, management. Probably first visited the market when I was just like 6 or 7 years old, long time ago. But now I'm there all the time. I live down the street in Ohio City. I kind of have to echo Chef's comments. Getting to know the vendors and a lot of them personally, being in and out of there every day. That's probably one of my favorite things. And obviously the beauty of the building itself. I bring a lot of people from outside of Cleveland to the market, and without fail, every single time they're blown away. And so the fact that we're talking about all the ways to improve it, and people still feel that it's an amazingly special asset. It bodes well for the future, I think. Frustrating things, I think it's the same as what you were saying, the perimeter, the outside, what does it look like? You don't even know if it's open some days, and the trash piles up and pallets pile up, and there's trucks parking in places that maybe shouldn't, and that kind of stuff. But I know that's just the tip of the iceberg. So.
I'm Bonnie Tewan. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the City of Cleveland. Probably the first time that I've been to the market was when I was 5, which was longer ago than that. But the interesting thing is my family is from Europe, and we used to bring our family when they would visit from Europe to come and see the market, which is kind of interesting. You would think that Europe would have those all over the place. My favorite thing about the market is the architectural significance of it. The frustrating thing is the lack of maintenance to the building from the architectural significance of it.
Hi, my name is Tom McNair. I'm with Ohio City Incorporated. So welcome to our office here, and housekeeping, Wi-Fi, password, and everything up there if anyone needs it. Our organization has been involved in the West Side Market now for going on over a decade. To be fully transparent, almost everything I think I know about the West Side Market I learned by osmosis from Amanda Dempsey over here when she was working 80 plus hours a week, kind of running everything around the Centennial 10 plus years ago. One of my personal favorite things about the West Side Market and thinking about it in the context of the neighborhood, it is an amazing third space. It actually brings out the true diversity of a neighborhood like this. And we actually don't have a lot of those, right? Like everyone from all different backgrounds comes together in the market. It's an accessible place. And I think along those lines, one of my frustrations is that it is a place that kind of languishes, right? It kind of has succeeded almost in spite of itself and some leadership over the past. And so this is really exciting to see everything that's happening now and the direction that it's heading. And what I want to see is it go from that place that is languishing to a place that thrives. I think that was really well said by Jessica, and kind of be the heart that pumps blood back out into the neighborhood and surrounding.
Amanda Shukri. I am a vendor, third generation. My business has been there 62 years, so obviously love the market, love everything. Like, other vendors are my family, it's my second home. Obviously the thing that I would like improved is capital improvements. It's been a struggle for decades, but yeah, I'm just really happy that we're finally here in a place to talk about all this, because it's been a struggle for all of us.
Don Whitaker, been in the market since I was 13 years old. I've been in business 31 years now, and I'm the current president of the Tenants Association. And I just want to, on behalf of everyone from the market, thank everyone for coming here today, because we finally got here, and I don't want to dwell on the negative or anything, I want to go forward and positive. We all know about the negative, so I just want to keep going forward and thank everybody.
I'm Beth Bowman. I own Vera's Bakery at the West Side Market. The stand has been there 75 years. I'm the fourth owner. Prior to buying 5 years ago, Vera's Bakery, I provided product bakery for that stand. The lady who owned it was there for 40 years, and for the last 15 or 40, she bought from us. My husband is a second generation baker. 95% of what I sell, we make. So I should be at the bakery right now, so I can be making it for tomorrow. But they're pulling my weight for me, so I could be here. My favorite thing about the market is no matter who you are, where you come from, what you do, you can find something, find somebody. Customers are really my favorite part of the market. Interacting with them. Prior to being downtown, I had 2 brick and mortar stores, and COVID took care of that. So this is my last one. This is where we are. This is our bread and butter. And I'm excited to see this happen. I know I'm coming in a little later, but have seen it for the last 15 years and talking with the previous owner, which she still comes to the bakery all the time, is what really needs to happen. And again, excited that we're here and want to move forward and hopefully pass this on to, like you said, there's a lot of vendors who have been here for a very long time. Family and tradition is important, and I'm looking forward to the positive changes. Cleanliness would be awesome.
Hi, I'm Tom Boutros. I own Boutros Brothers Produce. I pretty much grew up in the market. My family owned stands 80s, 90s, and I took over in 03. As a vendor, I can't say as a shopper. Probably my favorite thing is customer and vendor relation. I think it's the best in town, and I love it. What else? I'm not going to talk anything negative. So let's go forward, just like Don said. And that's about it.
Hi everybody, humbled and grateful to be here. My name is Tanisha Velez. I work with the Fair Project. I also have a small business called Cleveland Fresh. So I first went to the market when I was a little girl. My mom used to drag us every Saturday to help carry the bags back to the car. And then my favorite thing about the market is it's a place where you can take family there, right? So I drag my kids on weekends as well to help with the bags now, keep that going. And then the frustrating thing I think is that a lot of the small businesses that I know and relate to aren't at the market. and they think it's expensive to be at the market. So I think that's one of my frustrating things.
Good morning, everyone. Good to see you all here. Carrie McCormick, represent Ward 3 in Cleveland City Council, also a neighborhood resident, also a market shopper. Similar story, I grew up in the city of Cleveland on the east side, in an east side neighborhood, grew up going to the market as a kid. And I would just say that, having traveled a lot of places, lived over in Europe for a couple of years, traveled a lot, came home broke because I did it, but was able to see a lot of markets across the country. And like so many things in Cleveland, the spectacular thing about our city and the market, and also a frustrating thing, is the incredible potential it has, which is the spectacular part. And the frustrating part is we don't leverage that potential. So excited to be in this room. I would just say 2 very quick thank yous. Number one, a lot of folks have been around this table for a long time. I want to thank the vendors for your patience. We have been in rooms for many years. Personally, having this conversation, and you have stuck with this conversation. So I want to directly thank you for being patient and continuing to be involved, even when it seemed like there wasn't a light at the end of the tunnel. So I want to thank you for that. And then the other thing is, the reason we're at this table is because of Mayor Justin Bibb, quite frankly. Without his leadership, we saw what that meant, not to have that leadership over the past 10 plus years. And I want to thank him because he came out during the campaign and he's keeping his commitment to significant reform at the market. And we saw that without that partnership, this work is extremely difficult. So to his administration here today, I want to thank the mayor because he, from day one, said this is a top priority. He put his money where his mouth is. He put his staff where his mouth is. And so I do want to shout him out because you can tell and feel that there is a change in how things are operating. And the market's a prime example. So thank you all for being here.
No, just so I've never sit next to a councilman. My name is Ryan Puente, Chief of Government Affairs for the City of Cleveland. I've been visiting the market, very similar to your story. My dad's been dragging me since I was about 5, usually on Saturdays, and that continues to this day. My favorite part about the market is like everyone said, the relationships with the vendors and the interactions and the stories. The most frustrating thing, bond, capital maintenance, and I'm with you.
It's not my fault.
I know it's not. I'm with you.
I'm here to fix it.
Whatever I can do, but glad to be here.
Hi, I'm Amanda Dempsey. I'm currently with Mitchell's Ice Cream. Formerly from about 2010 to 2014, I helped plan the Westside Market Centennial with Tom and a great team here at OCI. I transitioned to become the market manager for a short period of time as well, and then left in 2014. I started as a customer at the market and met many of the vendors as a customer. I moved back to Cleveland in 2003, so that's when my regular relationship with the market started, and I love the community aspect of shopping there and the relationship and just running into friends and neighbors and vendors, of course. I will not get caught up in the frustrating things of the market. I could do that very easily. I am so even emotional about it that the change is coming. Thank you to the Bibb administration and Councilman McCormick. It's unbelievable that it's happening.
My name is Ramat Wiley. I'm the owner of the Dune Spice Company on Shaker Heights. My personal relationship, just like everyone else, goes back to shopping at the market with my great-grandmother, catching the bus from Glenville and back, and unloading groceries. My frequency as a shopper has dwindled as a recent being a business owner. But before becoming a business owner, I was a food stylist for about 8 years. So the market actually had me, the market allowed me to shop for a lot of local products to bring into food sets. So my favorite thing about the market is the community of it all. The frustrating part, like you said, is just seeing the building just go. So I'm excited to be here and be a part of this revitalization.
I am Melissa Corey. I'm owner and operator of Saucy Song in Slavic Village neighborhood. as everyone else, I mean, it's the first place I ever saw an animal head. And look at me now, I'm a butcher. So it shapes people's lives. But it's you know, I come from a mixed ethnic household, and so to appease my dad, we were down there to try and find stuff, and my mom was like, why don't we find this anywhere? So I would say one of my favorite things about the market is just that it's just always been that constant, right? Like I feel like it's like your grandma or something. I don't know. It's like if you can take people there, you can find things there, you know, and so I definitely still try to make my way, much like Vermont as a business owner. Y'all are open the same time I'm open, so it's like real hard to get there as much as I'd like to. And I would say that one of the most frustrating things for me is there is no place to congregate. And so as shoppers are coming in, there's usually like, you can't make your way through because somebody's trying to enjoy their delicious pretzel or whatever they just purchased. And so not having a place to congregate that's safe and allow people to continue to shop would probably be one of my most frustrating spots, because otherwise I zip in and out, like just to get in and out. So I feel like I miss vendors or something that I wanted because of that.
I'm Ann Zoller. I consult with nonprofits. I used to run Land Studio, so our offices were next to the market. So I was there all the time. And then in a previous life, when there was a parks department, I was the head of a parks department. And the market was within the parks department. So ran the markets in that capacity in the 90s as a child. And I realized it's probably the first place I saw an animal head as well. So, as a child. And, you know, so I had different iterations and relationships with the market, but, you know, aware of you know, how important it is to the city, and, you know, running it in the 90s and then being there almost daily, you know, for about 10 years. It's just, you know, I think the frustrating thing is rather than, you know, it's the potential. And the great thing is that we're here to address that. So I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jason Russell. I'm currently in charge of operations and leasing for Bedrock here in Cleveland. Prior to that, and then Community District in Miami Heights. I would say, I grew up in the suburbs, like Hudson, and my parents would still take us to the West Side Market, and we'd always hop on the blue line and then take the red line there. So I thought it was always cool, like we're getting on the subway, going to this cool market space. I would probably say the most frustrating thing, and you said it for me already, is there's no place to linger and keep people at the market longer because they would spend more money. And I think because it brings so many cultures together, those instances where you share a table with someone with a totally different background, strike up a conversation would be fantastic for the city of Cleveland. And right now you have your bags and you're just like, we just get out of here, right? And that doesn't really foster the community that we really want to make overall. So very excited to be here. Jessica gave me a tour of the West Side Market. It's very similar to the Tower City. It's beautiful on the outside, but once you see behind the scenes, but there's a lot of potential there. Can't wait to open the apartments.
Thanks, Jason. Awesome. Let's see, Carrie, do you want to share?
Sure. Carrie Carpenter, I'm with Huntington. I have been going to the West Side Market since I was a kid. And I probably visit the market twice a week. I would say my favorite things about the market, in addition to the building and it being a beautiful European-style food hall, are some of the vendors, right? I mean, we all kind of have our regulars that we go to, including some of those in the room today. Frustrating thing about the market, I would say the lack of evening hours, right? You can't stop by after work to pick something up on your way home. You know, you've got to be a little more planful in when you go. Of course, some of us, like me, have our regular days that we go. I think I got more deeply involved in the market back in 2012 during the Centennial celebration. The bank that I worked at the time was the presenting sponsor. And I was involved on one of the previous mayor's committees back then, and got to know the vendors in a different way, right? In a marketing way, and just, you know, learning more about you know, what they needed. And so I'm really thrilled to be a part of this committee and the future of the market.
Thanks, Carrie. Jane, you want to go next?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Jane Platt, and I'm Executive Vice President and Chief Administrative Officer at Metro Health. I've also been a resident of Ohio City for 22 years. I recently moved into the intro Cleveland. So my apartment literally looks out over the West Side Market, and every day I watch the progress on the clock tower. And it's really been an exciting experience to be able to just look out the window and watch the liveliness of everything that happens in this immediate area. I am filled with joy on the weekends seeing the parking lot completely packed with cars in and out, cars not able to find parking spots. It really is a really hopeful scenario from this perch. I'm here to represent what I think two things. Number one, I think that the West Side Market is woven into the fabric of Clevelanders in general. And I think that mostly for those of us who obviously have been to the market, but you know, it's not an East Side, West Side thing for once. This is a West Side Market gem that is a forward momentum potential for the city of Cleveland. So I also represent a business that has the ability and the desire to establish food-based relationships in business with vendors. We are constantly looking for creative suppliers for our employees in our cafeteria, and it's a straight shot from here to Metro Health. So we are looking forward to those business relationships. The exciting thing for me is that Mayor Bibb, Carrie McCormick, Jessica, and many others are still they are reinvigorating this conversation, and that many of us are still in the room to really be committed to making sure that this takes off, and it takes off so that we are a revenue generating operation and that we have forward momentum to be a strong visitor destination. So I think that, I know I said a lot there and I apologize for that, but I'm just really thrilled to be here and know that this is seriously being paid attention to. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Last but not least, David.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. I'm David Gilbert. I'm CEO of Destination Cleveland and Greater Cleveland Sports Commission. I probably, like so many of these others, it's really exciting. I have a real emotional attachment to the West Side Market, like most of these stories. I just grew up going there very regularly. When I was trying to sell my wife I'm moving to Cleveland, this is where I took her. When my kids, whenever they bring friends who are not from Cleveland home to Cleveland, it's the first place they want to go. I honestly can't think of a place one single place that represents Cleveland better than the West Side Market in so many ways of what Jane said, East and West, and diversity and multi-generational. It is. I really believe it is one of the greatest assets that we have, and I think it's neat. You know, Dan's in the room thinking about the intro, probably the coolest new space in Cleveland, right across the street from the coolest old space in Cleveland. And I think, to me, probably the most frustrating thing is it is, in my mind, probably the single most underutilized asset in the city. And the fact that this process is going on just has me so incredibly excited and wanting to help any way I can. The one, I don't know if it's the best analogy, but I do think a lot of, probably my two favorite places in Cleveland are West Side Market and Edgewater Park. And I feel like if you look at, amazing when Metro Parks took over Edgewater, how almost immediately it transformed into a completely different space. Look at the development, and look what it spurred, the development around it. And I feel that the same thing can and will happen with the market, that under different management and a more coordinated effort, it will elevate what the market is, not only in and of itself, but what it can do for everything around it in a way that most people can't even predict yet.
Thanks, David. Thanks, everyone. Let's see. You know my organizational affiliation with the City of Cleveland. My personal history, relationship with the West Side Market. Actually, I'll keep you guys this way so you can see everyone. I grew up outside of Akron, and for some reason we treated Cleveland like it was a whole different state. So I had not been to the West Side Market until I moved back to Cleveland. And that was in 2015. And I walked into the West Side Market and was so mad at my parents, where I was like, why have I never been to this place? I didn't do a field trip. I didn't do anything to come up here. And it's one of the reasons I moved to Ohio City. I loved the market. I loved the potential of the market. And it's what, brought me to this neighborhood specifically. I shop there every day now because that's where I eat my lunch. My favorite thing about the market is it's probably how small it actually is once you get to know it. Like once you get to know the market, you start to understand all of the relationships and you really feel like it's yours, right? Like so many people said like my vendors or it feels like something that you can really own. And then similarly to everybody else who is intimately involved in the market, I'm not going to name frustrations because it's there's too many to go through. So I had 4 slides about it. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ted and Hugh to introduce themselves and bring us to the rest of our agenda.
Great. Well, thank you all. That was really
make this small.
That was great to hear. And let me see if I can figure out how to make this work. Okay, you go away. And maybe it'll go away by itself, hopefully. All right. Ted Spitzer, I'm president of Market Ventures, Inc. We're based in Portland, Maine. And we've been retained to assist the city on this transition process and to develop the master plan. My firm works on public markets and other kind of food-based economic development projects throughout the country. Somehow I've been able to make a career out of public markets. So I've been doing this work since I was in college, which is getting farther and farther in the past. I'm the lead author of really kind of the only book written about public markets since around 1900. And we get involved in master plans and feasibility studies and concept plans, all sorts of stuff around markets and other food strategies. So what I try to bring to this work is some national experience, what other markets have done, some knowledge about local food systems and kind of what that means, the interconnected nature of food in our economies, background in downtown revitalization work and urban development, so some kind of 10,000-foot level understanding of the big picture. And then I try to combine that with what I call the 8-foot view, which is kind of your merchandising window in a market. And I'll talk about this in a second, but I've been involved now with markets for a long time in every kind of possible way. So as a planner of markets, as a manager of markets, and as a tenant in a market, and a business owner as a vendor in a market. So I try to understand that piece as well. And then try to put that all together. Come on, Mr. Slide. Put that all together and doing the kind of work that is both broad thinking and very practical on the ground level. So I've operated different kinds of markets, some in very low-income neighborhoods, like the Bronx Sunday Market and one in East Harlem. I live in Portland, Maine, because I moved there in 1996 to oversee development of a new market that opened in 1998. And very involved in, will be involved in the development, have been involved in development and will be involved in the operation of a new market that's opening up in Fort Wayne, Indiana. As part of my experience running the Portland public market, we had some vacancies. And we were fairly young, so our strategy was actually to create an operating company and run some of the stalls in the market. It turns out to be a lot harder than it looks to create a successful business. But one of those businesses we ended up owning was called Maine's Pantry, which I ended up owning with my wife for 20 years. Its success is completely due to her. And I witnessed something I kind of knew intellectually, which is the role that a good business owner can play in small business success. I knew that intellectually, and then I saw it when my wife owned the business. And I met her in college. She went to law school. She worked for fancy law firms for a while. Then she stopped working at fancy law firms, and I was supposed to earn income. And when we moved to Maine, a business had gone under. It had been one of the lowest grossing businesses in the market. And again, I kind of inherited it as a manager. Like, we got to keep this thing going. And I asked her if she wanted to help. We had 2 little kids. Hey, do you want to help out with this? And she said, okay. Turns out her father was a salesman in New York City, and again, I knew him, but didn't really understand what that meant. That was a kind of generational thing. And then she took over and started to enjoy kind of being being involved in this business. And eventually, I said, well, do you want? I had negotiated a lease with someone else who then flaked out on me, and so, well, do you want to take over the business? Do you take the lease? She said, okay. She doubled sales the first year that she was there. Well, that's pretty good, but it started from such a low base. It was a really bad, poorly run business. That's like, okay, well, you showed up and you were nice. Okay. The second year, when she doubled sales again, and it was like, oh, wow, like, you're doing it. So the same business, same location, same products, just the right owner. And she made what had been a very low grossing business to one of the highest grossing businesses in the market. So it turned a $100,000 a year business into a $500,000 a year business. Selling the same stuff, jams, jellies, chocolate, gift baskets, but a passionate owner. Anyway, so that was really great instruction for me. We also had really great food in our house, which, everyone here knows that's part of this story as well. Market Ventures Inc. gets involved with a variety of type of projects all around markets. So some of them are existing, often historic markets. We've had the honor of working on markets, including the Lexington market in Baltimore, established in 1792, still operating on the west side. Not in a beautiful building, because that building burned a long time ago and they put up an ugly building. Recently been working in Rochester, New York. I've done 2 master plans. One was fully implemented, and now we're creating a second. We relocated, involved in the relocation of Essex Street Market in New York City. We've worked on Reading Terminal Market in Philadelphia, which is a really wonderful example of a market. We helped move North Market in Columbus in the 1990s. So again, I've been doing this for a very long time. I've worked on the Detroit Eastern Market. And then we also helped create new markets, and some of them with nonprofit developers, including the Grand Rapids Downtown Market and the Milwaukee Public Market. And then we work with some private developers. So this market we're doing in Fort Wayne, Indiana, has a lot of public money in it, but it's being developed by a private entity, and that'll open up in October. Recently, we've done some food hall work in Delray Beach, Florida. Whenever there's a design element of a market, and there almost always is, I work with Hugh Boyd. And I'll let Hugh introduce himself, but he never brags enough about himself. So I'll do the bragging for him, because that's not his nature. So he's FAIA. That means he's a fellow of the American Institute of Institutes, American Institute of Architects. The AIA selects about 1% of its members to be recognized as the top 1% of architects in the country. Hugh has his own firm. He's a one-man kind of show, but he's recognized as being by far the best. And so it's an honor to work with him all the time, because he's made this market's his specialty. Say a few things.
Hi, I'm Hugh Boyd. Basically, all I've done for the last 35 years is markets. I was thinking about this the other day. I've designed over 1,500 individual stalls within markets over these 35 years. I've worked in historic markets, brand new markets. But the one thing I want to say is you all are so fortunate. You have one of the most beautiful markets in the world. And it's like the mecca for many market lovers who have to see West Side Market before they move on in life. And so I'm very excited to be working on this project with you all. I was telling Jessica, 25 years ago, I snuck into the market on an off day and was taking measurements of all the stalls and going down the basements. And because I at that stage, I was just trying to learn as much about markets, and the West Side had a lot to I could learn a lot from West Side. So again, I'm really excited, and hopefully we can do some great things here. So
thank you. We have one other sub-consultant working with us, an engineering firm out of New Jersey called CoolSys, and we brought them in because of the importance of the infrastructure. And again, not a lot of people have mentioned the building issues. And there's been a lot of effort, a lot of work locally to think about those systems, and that's really important. But there is some specialized knowledge we felt around refrigeration and HVAC and other things that the project would benefit from their input. So we had 3 engineers here yesterday, and we met with the city and their engineers, and I think had a really good session to think about some new ways to address some of the challenges again around the infrastructure things, which are critical to the market's long-term success.
We talked a lot about air conditioning.
We talked about air conditioning. All right, so in almost all projects where I get involved, we have a steering committee or an advisory committee to be involved, to be part of the process. I think it's really critical. I don't want to create a report and do work that is somehow divorced from the realities of the community. I want you to, well, first of all, I have an incredible client. It's rare to have a client like Jessica who is on top of everything and so passionate about what she does and so smart and so committed, and obviously has such a direct line to the big guy to help make decisions. So so thank you, Jessica, first for that, and Mayor Bibb for his interest in this project. But I look to the advisory committee to really kind of hold my feet to the fire, our feet to the fire, to make sure that we're thinking about this correctly, that we're considering all the right opinions, that our analysis is smart and can be implemented. So I look to the advisory committee to have input into the research and analysis, and we believe every market is different, every community is different, and therefore the research process is critical. Now, there has been a lot of research done to date, and Jessica mentioned the work that David O'Neill did, and there have been a lot of studies over the years. So we don't want to replicate what's been done. We want to learn from that. But we want to test some things as well. And also, the world is constantly changing. We certainly have learned that over the last couple of years. So we need to be up to date on our research. We want to make sure that all necessary perspectives are considered and that there are lots of constituents for this market. And so I think that's a burden for all of us when we think about, this is a community-wide asset. Well, it's a big and very diverse community. So we need to be very thoughtful about representing all of those interests in the market. I look to you to understand the analysis and the recommendation in a way that no one else will. They might read the report, but I'm asking you to really dig into it and think about it and challenge me and test it and make sure, again, we're coming up with a strategy that is grounded in, again, in a research base and a knowledge of what works or what can work here in Cleveland. If all that happens, hopefully you'll become advocates for the plan, because while I know the mayor is very committed to this, there are likely to be some naysayers perhaps, or people who think we're stupid and did it wrong, or think I'm stupid and did it wrong, because we are talking about some substantial change to this institution that everyone loves. So everyone will have an opinion, and insofar as you do believe that whatever we come up with is the right strategy, you could play a very important role in advocating for that strategy. We'll talk about this more in a minute. And we know that there are big problems in the market, and we know they're expensive to fix. So it will require advocates to get the funding to make the physical changes that will be fundamental to the market's long-term success. And we can do that all in 4 or 5 meetings. So we recognize that you're all very busy, and again, we want to balance the amount of time you spend in this to the needs. So we want you to be very involved, but we also don't want to burden you with too many meetings. So we'll be very thoughtful, hopefully, about that, and hopefully they'll all be fun and good meetings. And we'll do it in the afternoons, and maybe we'll get some ice cream. Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah. One of the favorite projects I ever did was working in Santa Rosa, California, in Sonoma County, and the advisory committee members we're winery owners, and they would bring wine. And our committee kept getting bigger and bigger because we had amazing wine at every meeting.
Jessica, was there a reason Great Lakes isn't a part of this?
Yeah, good point.
All right. We've all introduced ourselves. Do you want to make any comment about who the advisory committee is, or the thought that went into that, or do you want to just keep going?
We can keep going. I hope it's. I guess I will say this advisory committee is very intentional. We put a lot of thought into who's around this table, who's around this room. The mayor, was also very intentional about who is here. I think a lot of you represent lots of different interests, right? You don't come to this with one perspective. You come from the perspective, all of your backgrounds bring into this room. So, as Ted said, this group was thought about, who could really challenge any given strategy that we take, and we're hoping that you feel confident and comfortable, pushing us.
Thank you. All right, so let me talk about a couple things. So one is, kind of the why, and this is almost a given that we're moving to nonprofit management. So I don't have to sell anyone on the idea. I think, again, the owner of the building has kind of made that decision. But I think it's important to have it clear, what's the promise? Why would we want to do this? And also, what are some of the potential pitfalls of doing it? As Carrie mentioned, this is kind of a best practice. Other markets have gone through it, and there are good examples of success. But there are also some examples where it's fallen flat on its face. And I think we obviously can learn from both of those. So let me talk about why I think there's promise and why I see as some of the dangers that, again, we can try to plan for and avoid. So the first one is around just the nature of a nonprofit with that dual bottom line. And so part of that is, having nonprofits, good ones have clear missions, they have a vision of the future, they have goals they're trying to achieve, and then they have clear mission-based performance metrics so they can measure their success. So we know that they're good nonprofits and they're not so good nonprofits. The promise is to be a good nonprofit, one that has those qualities. Now, there is no written mission that I'm aware of for the Cleveland, for the West Side Market. Everyone kind of knows what the mission is. It's got this historic thing. We know what it is, but it hasn't ever been stated and put in paper. So the process of creating a nonprofit, doing it well, means defining that mission, clarifying that vision, and having those goals. I think this group will be the one that will respond to the proposal that I'll make about what the mission should be, and working with Jessica. And the words do really matter because it should be utilized in the day-to-day operation. I mean, it should be used for long-range planning, but also it should be used in the day-to-day operation of the market. So you're the stakeholders that will kind of bless, the way I see it, bless this mission. Yeah, that's the right mission for the market. So we'll spend more time soon about that because we need to clarify those items. So that's one bottom line is the mission, accomplishing a mission, knowing how we're going to accomplish it. Again, we have good other markets to talk about, and what could those metrics be. Again, I will propose metrics that we should utilize to test whether the market is achieving its mission. But the second piece of the dual bottom line is the bottom line, the economic bottom line, and being mindful of income and expenses. Most cities don't put income in, don't have P&Ls. They don't put the income next to the expenses. They kind of have income as something here and expenses as something over there. And the market is a business to run the market well, and should be thought about that way. So the nonprofit needs to have that element as well. So again, it's part of the work, and I'll talk about this in what we're doing with the master plan. But part of it is creating that P&L for the market, and looking at trying to get income to cover all expenses, and again, being much more transparent about that. So that's one piece. This dual bottom line, the nonprofit kind of fits this mission and business side of what a public market should be. The second promise is around resource acquisition, and I divide it into two pieces. One is around capital. So we know we have a lot of expensive things to do in the market, and we know it can cost a lot of money to get there. What we've seen in other communities, and what we've heard some interest here, is finding new sources of capital to help pay for it. And the most obvious source of capital for the market outside of city investment is the philanthropic community. You're blessed with some large foundations in Cleveland. And what happened in other cities, like in Detroit Eastern Market, the city said, well, the nonprofit, the foundation said, we will make a big investment. We know how important Eastern Market in Detroit is to the community, but we're not going to do that as long as the city owns and operates it. That doesn't make sense. We don't give money to cities to run businesses poorly, right? So we think that same strategy can be repeated here in Cleveland. So, and there's been some indication that will take place. So there are new sources of capital, but it doesn't stop there. There is also national grant sources, federal government grant sources. We think the nonprofit is much better positioned to pursue those other sources of capital. We don't want to let the city off the hook. It's a city building, right? So that's where this advocacy and pieces come in. This should be on top of city resources to get to those big numbers that we know will be required to really improve the market. So that's capital side. The other side is on the operating side. While again, we want to be business-like about the income potential of the market from rents, which will always be a major piece, that shouldn't be the only piece of income. And we've seen with other nonprofit-run markets, ones who do it well, they have found many other ways to raise money, both grants, donations, and their own earned income. So again, we want to think about all those possibilities. What are the, how can we drive more revenue in a lot of other ways so we can keep the rents affordable to support small businesses. That requires to have staff to do that, having staff on on the nonprofit, or be able to hire people to do the kind of work necessary to raise money. There's also the rent setting piece, and there's two things I'll talk about with rents. One is that the nonprofit, because of its dual mission, doesn't just say what's the rent how do I maximize rent, who's the highest payer of rent. It's mission-based rent. What businesses do I, well, there's a lot of ways of thinking about it, but basically having rents that are supportive of the type of businesses that we want, which we know are small, independent, fairly low margin businesses. So we can't raise rents too high. Yeah, maybe we could make more money for a little while if we had something else being sold in the market, right? But that wouldn't meet the mission side. So it has to reflect both, balancing, right, the value of the space, so the rents are fair, with the mission. Another really important piece is taking rent setting out of the political process. There's reasons why mayors don't raise rents, because sometimes merchants are really effective at saying, don't raise our rents. And that's not the best way to run a business. So again, in the long run, for the health of the market, what happens often in those situations, rents keep getting lower and lower and lower, then there's less resources to run the business well, and it leads to problems with the operation. All right. The third promise of nonprofit management is around leadership, and having the right board of directors in particular that have the passion and expertise to make the market a better place. So again, one of the important decisions we'll talk about is who should be on that board of directors. Again, this advisory committee will play a critical role in providing input into that question. But the basic promise is a great, energized, smart, connected board that can really help make it a better place. That leadership can also be more consistent. And we know every time there's a new mayor, there's a new attitude about the market that can lead to this being ups and downs. And finally, that board could have this broader mission objective than the city perhaps does, thinking about other things, particularly around food access, wellness, entrepreneurship, things that can be important to kind of other stakeholders in the process. A fourth promise around nonprofit management is around the staff. Being able to hire kind of the right skill set for the job. A little more flexibility in how they manage the market, and then flexibility in terminating people, and that's going to often be a problem in city government. You just can't get rid of employees sometimes, or it becomes very difficult. So having that flexibility can be really important to run this business of the market. Ability to pay the right wages, and I have data about what market managers are paid, and it's quite different from what managers have been paid here. So getting the right people who can do the job. It's also possible to incentivize performance around some of the metrics that we've talked about in a way that, again, a private entity can do that the city government cannot. And perhaps also being able to better plan for leadership transitions with orderly succession, again, not focused on the political cycle, but on other factors. And then the fourth promise is around kind of how the market operates and how it's programmed. As we've mentioned, Jessica mentioned, the marketing is done by the Tenants Association. That's not typical. Typically, a core function of market management is marketing and having the right staff. And marketing has not been a strong suit, rarely the strong suit of city agencies. So pulling in those things that should be in the right place is part of what this nonprofit can do. It can follow operational best practices. Things I think about a lot is new technology. There's incredible new technology around markets. Some markets have introduced point-of-sale systems that every merchant has incredible quantities of data, which we know most businesses are so data-driven. There was a conversation point we had last night with the merchants who are skeptical of that idea of having the landlord have access to their sales. I totally get it. I'm not going to propose that we do this in West Side Market. We need to be aware of what's out there. And maybe one day there'll be this great partnership created that there can be that sharing of information with the same goal of how do we drive more sales. But technology just in general, I think, is something that the nonprofit can introduce that's hard for cities to do. And then more flexibility in budgeting and expenditures. I think there's lots of good reasons, all right, and a lot of things that we want to design this nonprofit to do. But we also know that there have been challenges with nonprofits. And I kind of divide it into two major categories. One is financial. And nonprofits don't have the resources, obviously, that the city does. So what happens if there is some big problem that can sink a nonprofit in a way that is unlikely to sink city government? So we need to look at those times, and like crazy things happen, like pandemics that no one expects, and suddenly you can have vacancies and things you didn't necessarily plan for. So we need to be very thoughtful about having a resilient nonprofit to be able to weather those storms. And unlike the city, it won't have the automatic source of subsidy when things are going bad. So we need to be thoughtful about that too. And then I think another major challenge around leadership, which we've seen, is can you find that good board that will run it, that will have the interest of the market at stake? I think sometimes boards start focusing on other things and kind of ignore their core mission. So we've seen that happen. Or the board gets kind of captured by some group, and again, that's not doing what's in the best interest of the entity. Or finally, does it not have the resources that it needs? Particularly if there's some challenges. So again, going into this, being mindful of the problems helps us design a system that hopefully can address these issues. Any questions about that or comments people want to make about the nonprofit? Okay. So this is a very rough initial, just put it on paper for the first time, idea of this transition process. So I tried to highlight both some of the key steps we have to take and an end date of when we hope to get there. So if we go to the end, you'll see it's September of 2023. So we basically have given ourselves a year to get to that point. So it's in a 110-year history of a place, it seems very kind of quick, but we don't feel any reason to linger, and we want to move with all due haste to get there. We don't want to do this during the fourth quarter of the year because that's the busiest time in the market. So to me, it's either do it in the third quarter or wait until the next time. Again, we're talking about when the city manager walks away and the new nonprofit manager starts, right? So that's that transition time. So just kind of go through the major steps. We're kind of developing the strategy over the next few months. There are resources that are necessary for this transition process. Some resources have been identified through OCI already to help do this with some leftover funds from previous activities. More funds are needed just to do our work for this project. And then there's other costs that are associated with even implementing the plan, just getting the people on board to do this. Not even talking about the capital costs, which we know are important as well. So we need to get some grant applications in during the grant cycles, and the foundations have 2 grant openings a year. So it's September, October this year, and then in the spring the following year. So being mindful of these grant cycles is important to fund this effort. So in the early fall, we need to begin determining that mission, those vision, those goals. That should be the foundation of the nonprofit. Then we need to kind of incorporate this new entity. We need bylaws, we need those kind of things. Luckily, there are other nonprofits in Ohio, North Market in Columbus, Findlay Market in Cincinnati, that have bylaws, so we can kind of learn from them and borrow some of their elements. Jessica is amazing at getting information, and so we have that already, up-to-date information already. Then we need to go to the process of figuring out what that board is and selecting them and training that board. So I think that's a really important thing. We don't want to say, okay, you're the board, good luck. So that's part of the role that I see Market Ventures playing, is getting that board on board and ready and understanding all the issues and getting them really knowledgeable and what their role will be. We have another chance in the spring for some more funding. Then we need to create this operating agreement. So the city is going to always, the plan is for the city to own the building and have responsibility for the building. So the agreement between the city and the nonprofit is really important. Again, we have examples of that from other cities, and we want to be very thoughtful about what burdens will the city keep and where do they release. There's some interesting issues here around bonding that we need to be also very mindful of. There's some general obligation bonds tied to the market, and so there's some Ohio law that we're thinking through that we need to make sure we're not screwing anything up through this process. Then the city has to repeal or change some laws because now it's in the city code to operate the market. So those have to be addressed. Once that board's in place and the funding's in place, then we need to hire this executive director. And that obviously is a key hire for the transition. So local, regional, national search. I mean, this is a really important job. So why not have the best person to do that work? So that'll take some time, to do a very thoughtful search. So again, writing the job description, vetting it through this committee is important, and then having this search process. That also costs some money, so we need some resources for that. Getting that person on board and trained and prepared, while they're not yet running the market is really important. Getting them hiring their staff so they're ready. Hopefully maybe staff could shift over so it's not all new people, on opening day. So we need to be very thoughtful about that. We need to make sure they have the tools, standard operating procedures and service agreements and the insurances and all that kind of stuff. All that stuff. I put here in a partnership development because I think one of the things that the market has done somewhat, but other markets have done even better, is working with the other major institutions in the community and developing really good partnerships, particularly if the mission does have some entrepreneurship or wellness or health or other kind of programmatic ideas. How do we develop some partnerships and have some early wins around that? Hopefully we'll have some new spaces in the market that he's going to design that includes educational spaces and event spaces and things, our revenue streams and partnership opportunities around that. So we'll get some of those lined up if we can before the year is over. And then boom, someday we're going to hand the keys. And so we want to be as ready as we can for that, not taking longer, but not taking less time. So this team felt, again, at first blush, the right timeline, but it's obviously something that we'll be talking about as we move along and see if we can get to that point. So that's a piece of the work. The other piece of the work is this master plan. And so we have this thoughtful, thorough business plan in place so the nonprofit knows what it's doing, when it gets started. And so this is kind of a snapshot of the scope of work which Market Ventures has to create this master plan. And so some of it's around research and assessment and learning from previous studies, doing some additional research. We're going to do, for example, an intercept survey in the market. So talk to people who are actually in the market. There's been other research done, but no one has done that, at least in a long time, that we're aware of. Talk to the actual customers in the market, have some good data about where they come from, what they like, what they don't like, whole list of things. We're looking at obviously the facility issues and really trying to prioritize which improvements. Again, there's a lot of work that's being done by the city. There are other things that we think should be done, so we'll be talking about that, reviewing the operations. The end of this first phase is a SWOT analysis. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. This way to consolidate all that information in one place and again, have the priorities. And so we'll have a phase 1 report that we're shooting to have that done by the end of the year. Then we get into second phase of work, which is again really a vision and program, so a very thoughtful strategy around design and development, new program elements, expansion places in the market, using some spaces better that are already there. Again, talk about these partnership opportunities, some conceptual design work. There's some interesting opportunities around the parking lot and what that could mean and how that could potentially change. Parking is a really important issue, but the land's also really valuable. So what are some opportunities around that large parking lot? And then looking at some phasing and implementation around those physical improvements. And then finally, having a strong management and financial plan, again, that the nonprofit can have. It's at least, it's P&L when it starts. It's been approved by the board, and so it has its metrics of what it's trying to achieve, how much money it needs to raise, all those things, tied into also some development cost improvements. And then again, we'll wrap it up with a final report that, again, this new board, the new nonprofit will take, hopefully, as a good strategy for them to move forward. And throughout this, I'll be working obviously very closely with Jessica and the advisory committee to check in at different points to make sure that we're covering the bases, thoughtful, and a good strategy to move forward. Any questions around?
Who's a part of the consulting team for the research and assessment?
Who?
Yes.
You're looking at.
Okay, I didn't know if there were more people involved.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we'll hire some surveyors to do the work, but yeah, no, they've bought this, whatever it's worth. So that's
Just really quick. A few years ago, the city did do a customer survey that they sent out, so there is that information out there. Yeah, so there is. I just want to make sure that you knew about that. And then I did have a question. So I've noticed since Jessica sent out this press release a few weeks ago, a lot of the City of Cleveland workers are a little on edge, whether their jobs are going to be secure. Have you experienced any type of jumping ship in situations like this? And how would we get to, in a year, having new workers and retaining the people that we have in order to make the place running for the next year.
Well, both things are happening. Some are leaving,
Yeah.
probably some are going to come.
Okay.
Right?
Oh yeah, I was just
Right?
wondering.
So a new person starting.
August
in
22nd.
22nd.
Yeah.
Who's coming in knowing?
Yeah, it just seems to have caused a little unrest, and obviously it's going to go through that. I was just wondering if you had
And we've had conversations with all the people who work at the city. I mean, change is always an adjustment and scary. So it's something that we're also helping manage.
You have contracts too, like with EMC to cover.
Oh yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Great. So let me just how we with time here. Ooh. I'll move quickly. So I just want to kind of talk about a few national trends. So one. So this interest in local foods, and our chefs can talk about it, of course, I think as well. That hasn't gone away. It's been around for a long time. It's farm-to-table eating. The market represents that in some ways and doesn't in other ways. So there's never been a farmer's market, as I've heard of, at the West Side Market. Obviously, it had very strong produce for many years. Now it's gotten the fewer vendors there. So that's an interesting trend to think about how that might, what that might mean for West Side Market. We were seeing for 30 years this incredible growth of farmers markets around the country. It's finally started to tail off. And this is through 2019, so this is pre-pandemic. But some of that, there are many more than there used to be, but now they're not new ones every year. What we have seen are this explosion of privately developed and operated food halls. We were at Van Aken. Right? Yeah, it was great. We went there the other night. So there are several thousand food halls are being created around the country. So there's private developer interest. Again, it's not the same thing as West Side Market, but it's interesting to think about, and it is still small, independent, local businesses, in the food space. So it's an important trend to consider. The pandemic brought out a lot of changes with everything. Obviously, it was disrupted a lot of places, including those that were known for being the elbow-to-elbow, place, and West Side Market was that, as a great representation of that. So some places like that suffered. At the same time, there was increased demand for groceries as people stopped going to restaurants. So in some markets and some vendors really benefited from that trend. There's been a lot of introduction of technology, and some, a number of the vendors are selling online and are using that. But obviously, that's an exploding element of our society. Some markets really became center of emergency feeding, and places where people who utilize SNAP were coming to the markets, and we saw that in different markets around the country. And I think coming out of the pandemic, we're also seeing this pent-up demand for social spaces and some realignment of people's values and caring about small business and caring about those third places and things. So I think there's some interesting potential around markets coming out of the pandemic. And then another thing, that markets were not immune from larger societal issues, like suddenly the focus on equity and diversity and what does that mean for our community? So I think there's new language around that, hopefully some new thoughtfulness and some action. And I know that's a priority for the mayor as well. And where does the West Side Market fit in that conversation about diversity and equity and inclusion? So I just want to touch quickly on 3 national models. So these are all historic public markets that have gone through successful transitions to nonprofit management, and they also made substantial renovations and tenant mixes changes as part of that. So there are 3 of them I'll talk about is Reading, Trumbull, and Philly. Hugh will talk a little bit about his experience in Findlay, Cincinnati, and then also about Eastern Market in Detroit. So Reading is a very interesting market right in downtown Philadelphia. It's been operated since 1893. There was a farmer's market on the site before that. Then the Reading Company wanted to put a railroad terminus in downtown Philly, so the compromise was to put the railroads on the 2nd floor and the market on the ground floor. So the market has been there longer than the railroad station and survived the railroad because it went away as the Reading Company kind of went into bankruptcy. Eventually, in the 1990s, they decided to create a convention center on top of and behind the market. And so the market was transitioned, in this case, from a private owner, the Reading Company, to a nonprofit. First, the Public Chartered Authority, the Convention Center Authority, and then they created a separate nonprofit just to run the market. Extremely successful. It's become the most visited place in Philadelphia. It serves a great diversity of people as well. It's one of the largest food stamp redemption places in the city, and again, a huge tourist attraction as well. There are over 80 businesses there. They have a compelling mix of fresh and prepared foods, some grocery items, a little bit of craft and jewelry, but again, you don't feel that as a dominant kind of a focus of the market. Much more seating areas, much more prepared foods available in this market as well. This chart is I'm not going to go through this in detail. Just one way I analyzed the mix is, how many vendors are in different categories, and then kind of we'll come up with a strategy around what should they be. So the middle bar here is Reading Terminal. Then this was work I did in Essex Street Market for the city. What do we have now? What are reasonable goals for the number of vendors in different categories, number of square feet or linear feet, so the customer experience in different categories. And then we'll compare that to some other markets around the country to see where Westside is, and where we'd like it to go. This is the mission of Reading Terminal Market. Again, they're a nonprofit. They have I feel overly long mission because you can't say it in the 15-second elevator speech, but it hits most of the important issues around what our market's about preserving history and architecture, about supporting small businesses, about celebrating food and the community. They made a big transition in the 1980s and 90s to having more Amish in the market. It wasn't always that way, but now it's really known for the Amish vendors. Their produce is inside, not on the outside. Their produce vendor is the #1 selling business in the market. They do about $4 million in sales. So we have different models, different places, evolve in different ways. Like I said, there is some more eating in the market. Some is at vendor booths. Some of it is at common area seating as well. They have some day tables, so kind of short-term rentals, and they have a fully equipped demonstration kitchen on the market floor, and they do educational programming and all sorts of events in that space. And they do raise money in a lot of ways. They have parties, they have fundraisers, they do catering, some of the strategies that we can talk about for Westside Market. The second model, closer to home here, is Findlay Market. Similar, again, a city-owned market, been around since the 1850s. They've had a lease with the city. They created a corporation in 2004, a nonprofit, the Corporation for Findlay Market. It's operated the market since 2004. They're open 6 days a week. They have an outdoor farmers market. You can see on the revenue side, they have about $3 million of revenue. Contribution to grants represented over $1 million. So this is again after being operating this way for 15 years. So one person asked yesterday when we met with the merchants, is it like a one-time infusion of money? Yeah, you get that up front, but a good nonprofit can keep figuring out the programs and the income streams to have resources that support the work of the nonprofit. In this case, they've gotten a little large. I mean, they do a lot of stuff in this neighborhood, so they have 25-person staff. That seems a little big to me, not necessarily nothing that we would aspire to, but they've evolved to this, and they're doing a lot of great programming. They have the resources to do it, so that's the way Findlay Market has evolved. So they're involved in all sorts of other things in the neighborhood in addition to just operating the market. Their mission is much more tight, which again, I think is probably a smart way to go as well. So Hugh, why don't you just talk a little bit about the...
Okay. I could talk a long time about Findlay Market. It was 6 years of my life. But basically, we were hired approximately 20 years ago, and the city, there was luckily one great city official who really had a passion for the market, and then there was a group called the Friends of Findlay that were just passionate shoppers. And between those two, they were able to talk the city into making a major investment into the market. They were struggling like Westside does. Sales were going way down. It was mostly a meat hall, and they were losing produce. They had no bakeries, no cheese, and so forth. So basically, what we came in to do was kind of to diversify, to expand the market so that we could have other uses within the market, like bakeries and cheese and a coffee shop. And the other part is it was really kind of an enclosed market hall within a great historic square, but all the buildings were vacant or derelict around it. And the idea was really to open up this closed environment, really make it part of the streetscape, try to come up with uses that could actually be within the historic buildings surrounding it. And so it was just not the market hall, it was the area around the market hall, the district, and it just became a much greater shopping experience for people. So it wasn't just the people coming down on a Saturday to buy, because their parents had gone there on a Saturday. The idea was really to try and make it a 4 to 5 day week, great shopping experience. And again, they went through the transition where basically the city went through all the major improvements, but then it was handed over to a nonprofit to operate at the end. And I think it was very successful. Again, like all markets, you have to keep adjusting. So I'm sure they want to make some adjustments now, 20 years later. But I think it's a great model for the approach that we're trying to do here. So
great. So one thing that was done there was the addition of a farmers market shed. As the number of vendors who sell produce was diminishing, they decided to latch on to the local food strategy and have farmers there. So there's a separate space created that operates several days a week, while the produce vendors are there more regularly. So we'll leave that for the moment. Some nice photographs. But if anyone's not been there, again, you guys are lucky. You're close to some great markets as well. So it's probably worth talking about some visits to those places.
Field trips.
There you go. And then the last place I just want to talk about is Eastern Market in Detroit. This market's been around since 1891. It's a very different type of market. It's a 50-acre district just northeast of the downtown core. The city ran it for many years. It was like one of those, those diamonds in the rough, people felt. And again, the foundation's kind of made this challenge to the city, saying, we'll invest if you get out of the business. And what I think is important for Eastern Market is the job they have done as a nonprofit, being able to develop a strong mission, raise lots of money from the foundation community, address food access and other issues throughout their community. Fiscal year 19 is only one snapshot in time, but that year they raised $8 million, from the foundation community, while the revenue was only 1.7 million. So they have big vision, big strategies around doing more, because it's the neighborhood. There's so much need in Detroit around food access and these other issues. Again, it's not a market hall. There's these amazing sheds that have super active farmers markets on the weekends. All right, it is 9:25. We have only a few minutes left, but Jessica, do you want to wrap us up?
Before we go, I just, we gave a lot of information today. This is the first meeting, so we wanted to really set the stage for everything that's coming next. So before we go, I think the things that I'm really curious to hear are, what, if anything, do you have concerns about this process? Like we said, we want you to challenge us. So if there's anything that you hear that you want to talk about, I will also be calling you all in the next couple of days. So if you don't want to share in this room, that's fine. And then how would you like to contribute to this? So what role do you want to play? Since I ended on with David and Carrie last time, I'll start with David and Carrie this time. So David, do you want to go first?
So I guess right away, I think I'm thrilled how thorough this is. And it's funny, I was making little notes of things to ask about, and then they would get covered. So the deeper the presentation went. So no concerns, a lot of excitement, and I guess ways to help. I think organizationally, personally, from things I've been involved in, I think there's a lot of ways I can and am very willing to help with, and I'm sure we'll have some good conversations. But know that I'm here to do whatever I can.
Thanks, Carrie.
Yeah, this was really great and super helpful, and I was just remembering. I think back in 2012, Cleveland hosted the national, it might have been an international public markets conference.
Yes.
Because Westside Market was such a special gem. I guess my cautions are, we need to be very mindful in this process that, the part of the goal, right, is to make sure that the vendors are successful and people are shopping there. And, there's a big difference between turning it into a prepared food hall versus, honoring the tradition of butchers and bakers and produce vendors. And just to kind of make sure we're focusing on that and making sure that's maintained through this process.
Yeah.
So I guess that's my biggest concern, because if you ask any of the vendors, as I've gotten to know them over the years, like they're not interested in tourists coming And in terms of what I could do to help make the transition successful, I mean, I think some of my experiences working with small businesses and access to capital and, bringing the resources of the bank to help promote that is one. And then, my core skill sets are around communications and PR. So I think from that perspective as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Carrie. Jason.
I was going to say, the slide you had about the 8-foot interaction with 10,000 feet, I think was key, because the interactions you guys have with the vendor, the customer and the vendor right across the counter is what makes the West Side Market unique. They can go anywhere else to get produce or beef, but they go for that interaction, and that can't be lost in this process. So whatever business plan you created 10,000 feet, that is great, but it's the 8-foot interaction that makes the market it. So let's make sure that is key. How do we make that experience even better for the West Side Market in the future?
Thanks.
I'm so impressed with the thoroughness of kind of your approach to this. The one concern I would have is I think it's great to have a timeline. I would say that we ought to keep that working and not publicize it because we don't want it held up. I think it's going to maybe take longer to find an executive director. So I guess I'm practical in terms of absolutely let's have milestones for the process, but let's be honest about where we are and not be held to them in order to do things the right way. And again, just watching all of this, I do a lot of work with nonprofits now. I ran one. I'm really looking forward to be a resource in terms of how we approach this, getting the right people. To me, that board, that staff is kind of like the secret ingredient here, and we can't not think about that enough.
Thanks.
I guess my biggest concern would kind of go in hand with how the vendors don't want it to become a tourist attraction is the gentrification of it, and really cutting out folks that don't feel like they can access it. And that would be my one and only largest concern. I think as far as contribution, it's a wide variety as far as helping with creating the culinary aspect side of it, of how the board looks to immediate ways to have additional revenue streams and stuff like that. But also just an all around, I guess, business person who has a little bit of different knowledge.
My biggest concern is definitely maintaining the integrity of the market as it is now and how it's been over a number of years. But I am excited about everything I saw today, and I think that I can contribute a lot of information and experience I consider myself a master shopper. I shop for a living. So, and a few of the markets I've been to, I seek out markets wherever I travel. So I'm excited to offer more information as a shopper as well.
The thoroughness kind of eased any concern I did have. I feel like Ian kind of mentioned, it is an aggressive timeline, I feel, but there's been so much work already done that I think that puts the market ahead, and all of the partners in the room and the city administration are all supporting making this happen. So that kind of my concern shifted to just during the transition process, making sure that the existing vendors are able to thrive while still forward looking on the market's future, but protecting its authenticity, making sure that it is able to serve a diverse customer base and not losing that. I am happy to do anything, contribute kind of my past experience to what I learned from other markets as well. I lived in Cincinnati for 6 years and was met with their market leadership very frequently when I was at the West Side Market. So really, really happy to offer any help I can.
Just quickly, reflecting the interest in, we talk about this every time at the table, West Side Market comes as we backfill vendors, ensuring the diversity of the vendor stock, which also ensures the diversity and stability of the customer stock. Just another point, communication to me is going to be really important in this process, but you get internally and externally, and just ensuring that we're all on the same page and communicating properly is really important. offer high level, talk with the mayor a lot on this. So with these members, everyone here, with the mayor, myself, convening those partners at the table when appropriate, foundations, business community, otherwise. They have all reached out to me over my time on council, so I know that they are hungry to be a part of this. So where appropriate, where we can plug them in, happy to be assisting in convening those conversations. And then just immediately in my job, city council is a ward-based system, for better or for worse. And so there's this thing called, kind of colloquially called ward prerogative. So I will be driving the legislation on reform, on all of that. I think everyone's clear where my head's at on this, so I don't think there's going to be a conflict there. But just I'm happy to be a partner in any legislative issues. City council will continue to support subsidies to the market as we do every year to ensure that it's stable. Obviously, goal being for it not to be there someday, but we will continue to support the market through this process. That's not a question. And then any legislation needed to advance this work, I will support.
For me, I think something that's concerning is how diverse are we going to make this through the process? It's very easy to say it, but does our action match up to our intentions? I think that's the concern, even like to look around in the room and see who's missing, whether it be race or income or background. I think that's something that's important, and I like to challenge you guys to look into that more. For me, I think it's just helping as much as I can with the diversity and even bringing in more on the boots groups that are actually doing this work, not that are in this room, right? So I'm very passionate about that work and just making sure that everybody's voice is heard. That's not just Ohio City, but it's a Cleveland base from east side to west side, crossing these bridges, even with council being, heard and just, yeah, that's where I'm gonna stay at with that. Thank you.
All right, so my biggest concern would be, obviously you're talking about our voices as vendors being lost through this whole thing, and we just want to be heard. We got the biggest input, I think. We, on an operational level, we know everything there is that the market needs at operational level. I can contribute in a way, I don't know, I'm a produce guy, so obviously anything operational that needs produce, advice, I'm here.
You're more than a produce guy.
I'm
You're
just
giving
saying,
medicine to people too, because it's food, so.
Most of what we talked about today, we talked about last night at our tenants association meeting, and very informative, positive, and hopefully with getting everybody else involved in the community, I can help in a way that I've been an entrepreneur since I was 17. I've plowed snow for 20 years. I own an asphalt maintenance business for 20 years. I cut grass. And 15 years ago, I decided to leave all that fun stuff and work with somebody I went to high school with and help them start their business again as far as the bakery is concerned. So that's what I've been doing for the last 15 years. In the summertime, bakeries traditionally get slow as far as a brick and mortar goes. So I said, you know what, I'm going to take this bakery elsewhere and we're going to go do farmers markets. So I would do that every Saturday morning, and then it turned into every Friday afternoon and every Saturday morning, and I did that for 5 years. And what it did was help bring customers that wouldn't normally come in during the summer, but they would see you somewhere else. And guess where they came for their Christmas cookies? They were all at my bakery. And so to reach out and getting out of your comfort zone of what you don't normally do or see your vision is, I'm very old school. I'm not big on online ordering. I love tourism. They love bakeries. No. They're not going to buy a side of ribs, but they are going to tell people where they can find a great side of ribs. And so it's not just about that sale that day. It's about you get one chance to make a first impression, and we can't screw it up anymore. We really all have to be involved. We all have to do our part what little we can. I work 80 to 120 hours a week. Through COVID, we went from a place of 20 people working for me, 2 brick and mortar stores, plus the market. I used to have 5 people behind that counter. For the last 2 years, it's been me and my nephew. And now I have 2 other people and myself. One I'm going to lose to college, you know, but she'll work on the weekends. And so for me as a business owner, my product is coming from me. So there's a couple things. I make a phone call and have another bakery and provide steady business for that business. They've been in business a long time, local people. And whatever you do to that, you have to carry through. So I'm committed. This is it. This is my livelihood. If this goes down, you know, I go down. There's nobody I'm going to call and say, hey, can you make me 200 of this and 300 of that and whatever, because then it's not Vera's anymore. There might as well be somebody else's name up there. And the reason I keep it Vera's Bakery is because it's been that way for a long time. That's where people went. And previous owner, like I said, had it for 40 years. So if it ain't broke, you know, you leave it. It's tradition. It's the same product. It's the same person making it, even though the face is different. And so I think that's where we have to stay. Like Amanda, 3 generations. I mean, think about that. And to be in a place, Donnie, cooler guy. and look, if you run, especially with the vendor situation, if you run your business like a business and you're engaged, like you talked about your wife taking over, same business, selling the same stuff, the face was different, the attitude was different, the energy was different. It makes a big difference. Now, do I like to get up at 4:30 in the morning after going to bed at 1 a.m.? No. But if I can do it and keep it up. Am I the greatest? No, I'm just saying I really try. And I think that's important to see those that have gotten a pass about things and not not put it all out there. We all have family, we all have lives, we all have stuff. But I will give you whatever time I have because this is our livelihood. And it's important.
As a board president, I can be the advocate for the vendors because they will have comments and stuff like that. So I mean, we got to do that. That's our concern. They have a lot of concerns and all that. On a positive note, I'm trying to stay positive here. You know, in '99, Mayor White sent about 20 of us, Ohio City Incorporated, down to the Findlay Market. We are not that bad. So if we use that as our role, and then Amanda, we went there, right before COVID, and saw how it's transferred. So that's a good sign, you know, that we can fix it.
We were very impressed with Findlay Market and how it's come out.
Not 20 years ago, but yeah.
My turn. Okay, I mentioned this last night. My main concern is whatever board is put in place in this nonprofit to make sure that it doesn't have their own interests at heart and really just the market as a whole. That's terrifying that it could just go off into some crazy direction. And I mean, you see how much heart all 4 of us have. I mean, multiply that by 10 and that's more than 10 minutes to get the market. So it's just, everyone cares so much and everyone's so excited, but we're also scared because it's just scary. And then obviously, I mean, I don't think anybody has to defend themselves as vendors being on this board and what they can contribute. We talk to customers every day. We've been boots on the ground. We know exactly what that place needs and exactly what is wrong. And listening to us is, I think, invaluable. But
well, I'll say everyone has kind of expressed concerns, I think, really well here, right? I think the ability to maintain the authenticity of the market while it changes is critically important. And that's saying that like everyone likes progress, but no one likes change, right? I know that is hard. But going away from that, like I also want to say how excited I am that this is going on. I'm not joking. I almost brought out for dramatic effect in my closet in there. I have a stack 2 feet tall of plans for the West Side Market that have been developed over the years that have somehow ended up in our office, right? And so I'm hoping this is the last one and the one that actually gets implemented, and I'm extraordinarily hopeful of that. So anything that we can do, whether that be transferring some of that information and knowledge of all these decades worth of what people have been looking at, And certainly we are a community development corporation, right? So there are 10,000 plus people who live in this neighborhood. I've told Don and his predecessors all the time, one of the best things that we can always do for the market is continuing to help folks like Dan who are making new housing around here, because people tend to shop by where they live, right? The market is an extraordinarily special place, and so it will draw people from around the region to come and shop. But if your business model is based on somebody who's coming in once a month or once a quarter, it's going to be tough, right? Like, we need people here on a consistent basis. And to your point, like, over 2,000 plus of the residents in our neighborhood are residents of public housing. Second largest concentration of public housing in the entire city. That's something we've always looked at as a huge positive for our neighborhood. And we do have a great diversity. And so trying to find ways that we get the community involved in this process, again, anything we can do to help facilitate that, we're here for.
I think the biggest concern or thing to focus on is the word trust. And I think for this group, like Jess said, we're here for a reason, and I think the trust that we all here for the right reason and trying to move this thing in the same direction. We all have, diverse opinions, backgrounds. I certainly don't have nearly as much experience directly in the market, the way you guys do, but over the past 5-6 years, we got to know each other. I think that established trust is supremely important. Like, how many times have you been let down, either that things haven't gotten somewhere or they went in an entirely different direction than you were told they'd go. And so I think from that standpoint, adding to the diversity, that means a whole lot of different things, not just in the types of stands, but the types of people running the stands, the way the stands look, like all these things that emanate through to make this thing, move forward into its next evolution while maintaining the spirit, the nostalgia, the authenticity, the history, the family. I think that's all really, really important, and that's going to be something I hope to add to the team.
For myself, I don't see any concerns from my end. I do see a potential opportunity, though. We're in Ohio City, and I understand Ohio City is growing, and having a newer kind of vision. There are a lot of poor people in this neighborhood. So I think an opportunity to kind of go with the market would be to, kind of address some of the food insecurities in the area and have the market kind of be that anchor there, for that. And my little way I can contribute, I would love to help design a culinary kitchen in there. I teach classes, I teach cooking classes. I think that is a great way to kind of draw people to the market, or would be a great way to draw people to the market, and especially, some of the lower income people, and have them come in and learn how to prepare food. Yeah, you can go buy all the healthy food you like, but if you don't know how to prepare it, what does it matter, So I think that's a great bridge there, and again, I'm honored to be here, and I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. We went a little long, big surprise, but I appreciate all of your time. As far as next steps go, like I mentioned, expect a call from me in the next couple of days. I always feel like I process things and I always think about something else where I'm like, oh, I wish I would have said that one thing. So you don't have to proactively reach out to me. I'll be calling all of you. I also want to make sure that anybody who hasn't done like a deep dive tour of the market has the opportunity to do that. So I'll send out an invitation for in a couple weeks. We'll try to coordinate a time so that, if you haven't been to the basement recently and up to the clock tower and on the roof, we'll do all of that fun stuff, because I do think being in the market and seeing all of that is helpful. Ted and Hugh will be back in town, multiple times, and we'll continue to have these meetings. We'll think a little bit more about comms. As you noticed, we have our lovely friends from TV20 here. So we'll want to, make sure that this process is transparent and that anybody who wants to, be involved has the opportunity to really know what's going on in this room, right? I think this is important to a lot of people, not just the ones around this table. So yeah, those are my next steps. Do you guys have anything you want to add?
Could you explain what TV20 is, just for folks that might not?
Oh, sure. TV20 is the City of Cleveland's. Yeah, TV20 is the City of Cleveland's public access channel, essentially. So.
Is this the one that they do the council meetings at too?
Yes. Yeah, and so this isn't live streamed, but it will be recorded, and then we'll be able to share with vendors and with people, who are interested.
If folks watch this, so Trust me, they do.
Yeah.
Yeah. They do. So.
Yeah. And my hope is that people watch it, that they comment, that they reach out. You know, my contact information is all over the West Side Market and on the city's website. So my hope is that this becomes, you know, a really engaging process for everyone who's here.
The one thing I wanted to mention is that Hugh and I have gone through this wonderful marathon starting 2 days ago. And by the end of today, we'll have met with 31 of the 54 merchants in the market. So they're fairly brief, they're half-an-hour meetings. And everyone is incredibly punctual, and everyone has, you know, no one has missed a meeting yet. So I think that speaks a lot, of course, in terms of the vendors' interest in this process, belief in this process. So that's very exciting. Also reflects Jessica's organizational skills, you know, to get everyone there, you know, in the right place at the right time. So, you know, again, I think you mentioned it. You know, I think we all understand, we all believe in the importance of the merchants to the process. So our first thing we did, and we'll continue to do, is meet with every merchant, and hopefully we'll meet with everyone individually. We've already done 2/3 in our first visit. So we take that very seriously, and it's tremendously valuable information. I'll be reporting out some of that to this group, you know, as we consolidate all that information. But I think we're getting a really good handle on the issues, and therefore we can build a plan that's based in reality. So.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye, Carrie. Thank you.